Hello and welcome back to Barkerways. This year they're celebrating, or the world will be celebrating, it's 30 years since the launch of the fabulous 355. Now, you know I'm a big fan of these cars. They're spectacular cars, and I consider myself to be very fortunate to actually own one, something I never thought I'd do. What made them so special? I mean, they came out in 1994, and as I've spoken to before on these, Ferrari really sharpened their pencil on these cars. We'd come from the spectacular 308, 328 era into the 348. Wasn't quite so popular, so they really, Montezemolo, I think he was in power, said, right, come on guys. And what came out was spectacular. And it's still spectacular today. Here we are 30 years on, and there's going to be a lot of celebrations, I'm sure, on concourse lawns and things like that all this through this year. But what made it so good? I mean, it was a quantum leap. I've spoken about this before. It was a quantum leap on technology. We went on to 5 valve per cylinder. We had titanium conrods. It was the first car that had Formula One paddle gears. This is something that had been rattling around in Formula One, sort of early 90s. They'd been playing around with it. Eventually they got it to work and they transferred it into their road car program. So it had a lot going for it. The styling is spectacular. I think the reason these cars still command so much money today, these are still fetching financially more money than 360s and 430s, which were two generations afterwards. There's a real following for these cars. The marketing was spot on. You had this is a Spider car, so you had the GTB, the GTS, we take the middle out, or the full-on Spider. So from a client point of view, you could have whichever car you wanted. There was also the race series was really good. The 348 race series wasn't quite so successful. The 355 one was brilliant. This is such a good car. It made a really good challenge car. So there was a race series that was really promoting the car. You had options from the car. There was quite a lot of options. It was the early days where you could really, you could have carbon seats, you could have different colour stitching. You could really start to get your car exactly how you wanted it. And there was Fiorano handling packs. So on the back of the race series, they offered some of the upgrades. You had suspension upgrades, ECU upgrades, brake upgrades that you could put onto your road car from the race series. They called it Fiorano handling packs. So there was a huge menu that customers could choose from. You could make it a bit more sporty, you could choose colours, you could choose stitching, you could have 3 body variants. So from a marketing point of view, it was brilliant. The customer experience with these cars is something that really rings true today, say 30 years later. If you take this car, for instance, we sold this car to the owner probably about 4 years ago now. He came to us very specifically, always dreamt of wanting a 355, was very specific. I want a red one, I want a Spider, I want low mileage, I want creme inside, and we found him the car. So it's his perfect car for him. Since then, we've helped him enjoy the car. It's just come in, it's had some cam belts. We put a sports exhaust on because I think of all the cars that you can put a sports exhaust on, the 355 with a sports exhaust is like music you've never heard. A lot of the other cars you can put sports ones on, they sound okay, but these just sound absolutely magnificent. The 8,000 RPM flat plane crank engine, the 5 valves per cylinder, I mean, it is just absolute music. They really work. But also because it was the first one with an active exhaust, you've got a valve on it, so you're not having a booming exhaust all the time. The valve closes when you're driving through towns and what have you, and it's nice and quiet. But when you're on the open road, it is absolutely spectacular. So this is now part of the owner. It's part of their family. They love this car. They enjoy the car. It's exactly what he wanted, and it's sort of childhood dream stuff, which is the power of this particular car. Whilst this car is well into its journey of ownership and it's not going anywhere, and it's actually due to be picked up, I think today or tomorrow, so it's going to be leaving us very soon, we've got another car that's just arrived with an owner who's just starting his journey with his dream car. So we go down to the workshop and have a look at what we're going to do to that car. Okay, so here we are down in the workshop. So this car's just starting its journey with us. So this gentleman is his first journey into 355s, and he really wanted a Le Mans Blue car. Now, it's a very popular colour, but there's very few cars out there. I don't know exactly how many were done in Le Mans Blue, but there's not very many. And when they come up for sale, they tend to get snapped up fairly quickly. So we found this one. We did an inspection for him, and now it's come in to make it exactly how he wanted it. So it's now having So it's another Spider, Le Mans Blue with crema inside, which is a lovely colour combination. He is going for the sports exhaust because he said, I've got to have a sports exhaust. The noise of Ferrari 355s is sports exhaust. So he's having cam belts, service, full body detail and a nice polish up, some cleaning on the leather and everything to get it exactly how he wants it. So we're going to follow the journey of this car to make it exactly how the client wants. Okay, so here you can see we've got the engine out of the back of the car. Now, one of the questions we always get asked on 355s is about doing the cam belts. And yes, it is a big job because you take half the back of the car off, but actually it was really clever in the design of how they did it. So if you look at these great big plates here, you actually unbolt the rear part of the chassis and you can see it comes down with the whole cage, so to speak. So we just unbolt the back of the car and it comes off with the suspension, the brakes, everything all in one go, engine, gearbox, and you undo it from here and up at the top of the suspension, and the whole lot is designed to drop down that way to give you access to the cam belts, which have just been done on these. These are the new ones. We've done videos before on what to look for on these cars. The thing with cam belts, lots of people say, no, when shall I change them? We don't do the mileage. If it breaks, there's an awful lot inside one of these. If you start smashing up all your 5 valves per cylinder and braking pistons, it's going to be tens of thousands. So yes, it is fairly expensive to take all this out and do it, but trust me, it's a lot cheaper than rebuilding an engine. Okay, so looking around the back of the engine, obviously you've got the clutch, so clutch is in the back here, which is quite nice to get to. Some of the things we have found, as he's saying, these cars are 30 years old now, so what we have found is some of these cradles are rusting out. It is just Italian steel. And whilst the chassis is quite thick metal, all the main bits, these little tubes, we've seen them where they've rusted. And again, I've said before, these cars were so good that when they first came out, they encouraged people to come out of their Porsches and BMWs and use these as road cars. So they were used a lot just as daily cars, which meant they got wet. And now 30 years later, no, some of them aren't quite such good condition as others. So that's why they're starting to need a bit more recommissioning going forwards. I've spoken before about radiators. Once you've got the engine out, you can see there's a big hole here, so you can access coolant pipes and things, radiators, oil coolers, and we usually make a point of doing the work on all of these whilst we've got engines out. But we can see from this one that the under tray that's been off here, we've taken all this off, and the floor pan's all lovely and still covered in the original factory underseal. Specification and colours can make and break cars and what makes them popular. One of the things that really sort of tipped me onto painting my car Le Mans Blue was that they just look so fantastic, and colours change, colour trends change. Years ago, all the V8s, the smaller cars were red, retail red as we call it, and it was the bigger cars, the Daytonas, the 400s, the 550s, the bigger cars that were in silvers and greens and blues. Now the shift has changed, and Tour de France Blue and Le Mans Blue have become one of the most popular colours for the cars, and the reason is they look spectacular. Everybody who's seen that car has gone, wow, it just looks amazing, looks brilliant. 355s, there wasn't many. Most of these were done in red and crema. There was a few, very few black ones, green ones, sort of thing. But if you ever get a Le Mans Blue, this is like, in some people's eyes, the ultimate spec. Le Mans Blue, tan or crema inside. They sell just like that. Everybody wants. I've even had people saying, how much would it cost to paint a 355 in blue if I buy a red one, because these are so rare. I don't know the exact numbers, but they're so rare. People are now looking to respec the cars into this blue. As part of the celebrations of the 30 years of the 355 being launched this year, to do it with a Le Mans Blue car, which is really on point and on current for this decade of the cars. Something else that's really good on 355s, not that 355s ever sound bad, but if you put a Capristo exhaust on, it's absolute music. Everybody's heard them, it just works. So this car, we put a Capristo exhaust on, also got the Challenge grille. As well as breaking up the colour and aesthetically looking quite nice, they do actually serve a purpose, that these things get quite hot, and the reason they were on the Challenge cars was to get the heat out of the engine bay. So it is a double edge thing that actually works functionally and cosmetically. The 355 is now back together, the engine's back in, we've done the cam belts, we've serviced it, brake fluid change, We had a new radiator, I think we did an oil cooler as well, and the Capristo exhaust gone. So all the levels are done. I think it's time to go and give it a run and listen to the music. One of the biggest problems with the Spiders is to get the roof down, the seats have to go forwards electronically, which tends to squash you up against the steering wheel. I mean, I'm not more than 6 foot, but it does get a bit snug in here. So that's one of the disadvantages of the 355 and the roof. So the sun's out, we've got the roof down, Le Mans Blue and Crema, 355, Spider. What's not to like? Let's go and make some noise. I've actually had a phone call from the new owner of this car this week. He's just come back from a holiday. He said, "Is the car ready? Can I come and collect it?" So this will be the last run before he picks the car up. So we've already run it once just to do the levels and what have you. And then we give it a clean up. And the thing about the valve exhaust is that when you're going slowly like this, it's not noisy, it's not all boomy, but then as you open the taps, the music happens. And I think that's the great thing about these cars, that you can just drive them slowly and that you're not annoying everybody. They're nice and quiet. But with the sports system on a Capristo in this case, it is just one of the best noises. We'll let the police car go that's just gone past. We don't want to make too much noise with those around. So you just heard it then. It's a vacuum operated valve, so you can work it with your feet almost. It picks up on the revs. It's usually about sort of 4,000 or so they come in, depending on how much load you put on the throttle. So here we're just trundling along, what are we doing, about 55 mile an hour, 58 mile an hour, and it's not booming. But then you can just turn it on and off with your feet. It's brilliant. Love these. It has been running in a while in the workshop between filming on this, so it is almost already up to temperature. Traffic's just picking up a little bit. Generally we try and do these just during the day when it's quiet. And that's what the customer wants. He said, "I want my 355 to sound like 355 should," and that's the noise he wanted. It's music. I still admire the rev range of these engines. They are spectacular. But you can drive them slowly. We're doing sort of 3,000 revs now, just poodling along. And as you open the taps, it's such a brilliant engine. Just a little pop when you change gear, which is brilliant. He's going to love this. We call this road test weather because obviously we try not to drive them when they're wet. stay all day in this, couldn't you? You never get bored with driving these cars. I've been doing it for, what, 40 years or something now, driving these cars, and you do have to sort of pinch yourself that it's a privilege to go out in these cars. I know we're always responsible for other people's cars and we worry about the traffic and what have you, and we are looking for noises all the time. I'm looking at gauges, I'm feeling gear changes, and when we put the engine back in, did we get the gear lever lined up right? Is it all just feeling about right? But you've got to admit, there's worse places to be than road testing Ferraris. And this car's settling down really nicely now. I've got no vibrations through the steering. It feels nice and tight. Gauges are all good. Suspension feels good. We drive a lot of cars, and sometimes you get in them and they'll follow the lines of the lorries that they make in the tarmac and things. That's the trouble you get in these cars. There's always someone that wants to either take your picture or race you. I think it's a maturity thing. Brakes feel nice, they're just biting in nicely. So all the usual things now, we get this back in the workshop, we do the hot checks, redo the tyre pressures, retorque the wheel nuts, give it a clean, and then give the man a call. Because I'm sure he wants to be sitting where I'm sitting as soon as he possibly can. Like I've said before, as you come into the yard with the cars, our yard is fairly sort of bumpy, but we've got no knocks or rattles, the suspension feels tight. This is the perfect yard for testing things like the 430s and the 360s with the rose jointed suspension, because it really picks those up coming in and out of here. And there you have it, another one ready for the climb.